To another Friends from the Field webinar. This is a series, if you're not familiar, that is co-hosted by Blue Hill Heritage Trust and Island Heritage Trust. We are both land trust and community conservation organizations on the Blue Hill Peninsula, and then of course on the islands just south of the peninsula. And we've been doing this series for a couple of years now, so we have quite the archive of webinars if you'd like to check out past events and learn about many cool things. I'm going to pass it over to Noelle for information about how to participate in the conversation tonight, and then I will introduce our speaker. Thank you so much for being here. Oh, and quickly, I'm Lander. I'm the outreach coordinator for Blue Hill Heritage Trust.
Lander, it doesn't say on my end that it's recording yet.
It does say on my end.
I see it now. I see it now.
Okay, good. Awesome.
Hello, everyone. So happy to have all of us together today to hear from Alivia. My name is Noelle. I'm the outreach manager at Island Heritage Trust, and Olivia is excited to answer questions today, but would love to do so after the conversation. So if any questions come up, feel free to drop them in the chat box at any point, but we will be answering those. We'll present them to Olivia at the end and we'll answer them then.
Thanks, Noelle. So Alivia Moore of the Penobscot Nation is a two-spirit community organizer committed to restoring balanced relationship with the earth. As co-founder of Eastern Woodlands Rematriation Collective, they support the revitalization of the Indigenous food and healing systems, including the development of the Wabanaki Community Apothecary, Rematriation School, and Indigenous birthwork reclamation. She organizes with Wabanaki Two Spirit Alliance and serves on the board of Wabanaki REACH. Alivia is dedicated to child welfare system abolition and fosters Native children. We are so excited to have you here tonight, Alivia, to learn from you and hopefully be able to support your work. So thank you so much. And we will pass it over to you.
Okay, thank you so much. If you can bear with me a moment, I'm going to shift to sharing my screen with you all. And then that will help me. Hopefully, sometimes it can be distracting trying to navigate a slideshow and what I'm hoping to convey. So everyone is gone off from my screen. Can someone let me know if it looks good?
It does look good.
Olivia,
go ahead, Noelle, sorry.
and your video is hidden.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Oh, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. There's so much, and I really am hoping that to give space for this to be a conversation towards the end this evening. There's far more that I'd love to share in this conversation, that, you know, time and just coming together in this space doesn't make sense to try to say all of the words, but I'm hoping that people will have questions, wonderings, and really invite you to bring those in this space, and know that I know that a lot of really important information tends to get shared or brought forth that way when folks are kind of just kind of bringing up what's resonating or what's puzzling about the topic and this important work that we all kind of share a role in. Okay, so yes, I'm really grateful, and it feels important connecting with community, especially folks who are in so-called Blue Hill region or surrounding communities, that being a part of my traditional territory there. So it feels both like a responsibility, you know, for me to engage and develop relationships with your community and the organizations in your communities, but also an important invitation to the folks who are living, occupying Penobscot territory, an invitation to come into community, come deeper into community and relationship, to again, to do this work that is necessary for all of us. And so Wabanaki Rematriation, so Wabanaki being the place of the first dawn or the first light. And so tonight, thinking about this framework of rematriation and the importance of how that can support us restoring balance as humans, with land, with life, and as an important mode of healing. And I really, I think there's a really important distinction, as this quote my grandmother would say: we're not feminists, we're the law, right? Thinking about understanding rematriation as restoring matriarchies, and that matriarchies far predate so-called feminism, or not so-called, feminism, predate feminism, and a lot of important elements to inform and support feminism. But I just do want to be clear that for me, I'm not speaking from a perspective of Indigenous feminism, not that there's a problem with that, but I'm really working to engage with developing my own and my community's understanding of matriarchies. And so something that, again, it predates feminism. Okay, so just to get us started, I do want to do a little bit more of a grounding, and this is helpful for myself, and grounding in gratitude, and a grounding in acknowledging my many teachers that inform and have shaped where I am, and my understandings of life, my growing understandings, right? I'm very much in my own journey of learning, and of practicing, and of struggling, and of failing. And so I do want to elevate some of my important teachers, and also acknowledging anything that may be harmful or offensive, or that I'm just plain not getting right, is my own shortcoming. So yes, so I want to, yes, acknowledge my many teachers, my ancestors who loved, resisted, and have built a beautiful legacy that guide the collective work that undertaking in community. So through spaces like Eastern Woodlands Rematriation Collective, guiding the work also of Wabanaki REACH, and Wabanaki Two Spirit Alliance. It's also important for me to acknowledge my more than human teachers, and this including the Penobscot River, that my people are of and named from, the water, there's so many plants, trees, especially for me, important teachers. I want to acknowledge my family, my kin, really broadly, my partner, Sai, and of the many that shaped my thinking and my work, I want to raise up Esther Ann as really crucial to me in my life's path, as well as Duma Young and John Sillaboy as some Two Spirit elders that have been really important in my path, and then Nia Holly and Kristen Wyman, who are the co-founders with me of Eastern Woodlands Rematriation Collective. And then my greatest teachers in my life, my daughters Danica and Azakwaha. And in these photos, you can see some of my relatives, being my great grandparents and my great aunt next to them, and the middle picture being my great grandmother and her sister, who's the young one in the oldest picture there holding the basket. in that middle picture is my grandmother as a little one. And then for this, the more recent photo is my grandmother with my oldest daughter, the last time they spent time together before my grandmother passed. So that continuity and the importance of that. So again, acknowledging, so I'm sharing from my lens as a Penobscot person, as a queer Two-Spirit person. So these things both shape my understanding and shape what I'm able to see and to know. They also, you know, limit that in some ways. So in some ways, it's opening and allows me to see some things, and then it also makes it so there's other things that I cannot see and know. And so that those perspectives, again, shaping my understanding of rematriating and this work of land justice in Wabanaki. And generally, I love talking about, like, you know, this work and this framework and this guiding work of rematriation. Today, I'm going to try to make it briefer about rematriation and try to spend more time talking about the how, like what does that work in the land look like, and especially through Eastern Woodlands Rematriation Collective. So that I'm really excited to share more about the collective. So, but yes, wanting to ground our conversation in rematriation. And so rematriation in so-called Maine is a process of Wabanaki people. So this is Wabanaki-led, centered. It's our work, but it's our work of restoring our matriarchies, with matriarchal laws and relationships being embraced by the people of this land again. And so Wabanaki matriarchies are social, economic, and political systems. They have been developed in deep relationship with and humbling ourselves to the cycles of the earth. And so prior to colonization and prior to disruption of our matriarchal processes, our societies were more balanced, egalitarian, resilient, and responsive. Right, when we understand the challenges, the climate crisis, the incredible inequities around, like, related to race and class, we need balance, we need responsiveness and resilience, right? So the worldview of Wabanaki people is also one of understanding all things in cycles, whether that be seasons, life cycles, or even reflected in our seasonal village locations. Our cultures were reflective of the earth, respecting natural limits, while simultaneously being predictable and flexible, right? So predictable and flexible, kind of thinking about those two things existing together, and how important that is. Let me see, should probably move forward, huh? Yeah, Wabanaki languages also teach and show us a lot about what it looks like to rematriate. And there's a lot that I'm really grateful for elders, and most recently Elder Mi'kmaq. She's Mi'kmaq, sharing about language and the importance of working from and coming from our Wabanaki languages as a source of knowledge in this work of rematriating. One of the pieces that really stands out for me about Wabanaki languages is how it demonstrates passive and non-binary our cosmologies are. And so rather than gendering beings with concepts of he and she, our language actually, if once sort of translated to English, would be a general use of they. And so, but actually in the language, more so than meaning quote unquote they, it means something is alive. So it's speaking to the life in all of us. And so those beings being including, you know, humans, plants, but also rocks and our winged relatives and our fish relatives and so on. And we know that we all have a gift, and we all have a role to play in service of others and in service of of um, yes, of matriarchies and the well-beings of others. So, and matriarchy decision making was based in nurturing, and supporting life and honoring everyone's gift towards that. And the source of power, it differed from dominant culture now, where power is derived from influence over others. I should move forward, huh? No, maybe not for a moment. Um, okay, where power is derived currently, dominant culture, power is derived from influence over others and over resources, whereas in matriarchies, we recognize power from within, and it cultivates a reciprocity that strengthens the collective, that strengthens the whole. And matriarchies are a system of human law that lays out our responsibilities to the earth and one another, rather than a system of rights and entitlements. Oh, yeah. So there's so much more to be said about matriarchies and the work of rematriating. And I hope I invite people to ask questions when we get to that, because I would love to share more. I do want to make sure that we have time to kind of talk about what does this mean? What does this look like for now? How, again, not that I have all the answers, but from my position and some of the things that I can see in how we relate and move forward, really acknowledging that it's far past time to examine power relationships to one another and on the earth, with the earth, and acknowledging that the way that we relate to the earth is how we relate to each other. And so these realities of harm and disproportionate impact that we're living in, that these are exactly what we would expect. This is exactly what has this is exactly the only way that things can be when we're living in a way of exploitation and of competition and individualism that capitalism has arisen from. So we, understanding that, as we share this land, we share a future, and we're inviting non-Indigenous relatives into this process of unsettling these current harmful ways of relating, and to position yourself to adapt, right? As Wabanaki people have done since time immemorial. So Wabanaki people, we again are adaptive, responsive, flexible, and we continue to persist. We've been here for at least 12,000 years and have experienced and survived so much, and there's a lot that our leadership can teach others. And so again, supporting Indigenous restoration of our political and economic social systems, right? These systems that are founded in matriarchal values. Acknowledge our matriarchies as the human law of the land, as the human law of the land. I do want to elevate that and again, this human law of matriarchies were developed by humbling and in reflection of the laws and limits of the earth. So again, recentering that piece, that it's the law of the natural law of the land that is the supreme power, and human ways of relating and being can be and really must be developed in balance and reflection of those limits. And so and for non-Wabanaki people to respect that you're visitors here, and know that Wabanaki people, in accordance to our responsibility as your host, will make sure that your needs are met here in our territory. So trusting the leadership of Wabanaki peoples, that we're here continuing the work of our ancestors, and this work benefits all that share these territories, and all that call Wabanaki home. And so thinking about what rematriating locative. So we are a collective of indigenous, so-called Northeast United States, and we are, yeah, we're the folks that are the heavy lifters, just getting stuff done for our communities. You know, some of the folks in our collective identify as farmers, um, but um, so we have farmers, fisher people, medicine keepers, folks who are you know, wild harvesting foods, cultivating as our ancestors did for, you know, millennia, cultivating, selecting, invigorating our food forests, and again doing this cultivation, this harvesting, this processing of foods, with an emphasis on our traditional food sources, but also understanding you know, the migration of foods and the importance of climate adaptation. That this work is not strictly for our indigenous foodway traditional foods. That traditional foods have changed over those 12,000 years, and working with foods that also, you know, do well. We all love our tomatoes and our cucumbers, and they may have not been traditional foods to us here in Wabanaki, but they are here now and they are welcome relatives. So all that to say that our traditional food systems, yes, they are our fiddleheads, and being able to have porpoise and seal meat that hopefully one day is low enough heavy metal content that we can eat them again. But so traditional foods, and then traditional foods also are changing and are some of the new food relatives. And so, sorry, I'm like taking some like tangent paths here. um, so so within our collective, we are doing this food work to be able to share this food in our communities, to share about the practices of how we relate to these relatives, to these foods, and so again to reclaim and to share the knowledges of the practices of feeding ourselves in a balanced way, the practices of reclaiming our um, you know, balanced earth-centered economies, right, that were really based in our food systems. Um, and yeah, so we are sharing the knowledge, sharing the food, distributing it without cost. We do food distributions, medicine distributions year round. Um, we also, in this photo is, this was prior to the pandemic, right immediately before, but depicting we are also connected with international coordination spaces for the struggle for food sovereignty of peasant folks, landless folks, indigenous folks globally. And so, yes, when we are a part of educating in these forums, educating about the indigenous reality, especially in the Northeast. Indigenous experience in the Northeast is a pretty marginalized experience in the global indigenous narrative. So Eastern Woodlands Rematriation Collective really has been doing really important work in centering the work of rematriation in global food sovereignty work. And so we're proud of that, and proud of the relationships and the work, the relational work that we do across many communities of struggle to be in a connected relationship with the earth again. And we also organize a lot of our food work through what we refer to as mutual aid food brigades. And so we are doing this work across the Northeast. We kind of have two regions, very widely defined, one region being Wabanaki, or so-called Maine, which Wabanaki extends beyond Maine. But organizing hub sort of in Maine, and then in the Massachusetts, Rhode Island general areas. And so with those food brigades, we have folks who are, leading work and food projects in their own communities. And then our brigades are showing up to support, to share knowledge, to hands in the earth together on different work parties, knowledge shares, skill shares, supporting with distributing and restoring our traditional trade routes, right? Like there's a food source in abundance or a medicine in abundance one area, and sharing throughout our communities of Indigenous folks. And so this photo here are Kessie and John Kimball, and Kessie is Mi'kmaq, and this is an incredible project, My Wyoming Gardens, and they engage a lot of youth and youth apprenticeships in their work there as well. These photos are depicting, some of the traditional foods that we are gathering, sharing knowledge about how to use, eat, prepare, again, and then distributing without cost year round. So those are some, wild cranberries that me and my daughter gathered and shared out. There's moose meat that was shared from another community member, and then some wild rice as well. I think there might be chaga that accidentally ended up in the photo too. And then some medicines from our was packaging up and putting adoa, which is our name for that medicine. And so again, doing the educating of community about our language, our understanding of the medicines, how to use these medicines, and providing access to them as well. And so that is predominantly through the Wabanaki Community Herbal Apothecary, which is like central to my heart. And yeah, so some more photos from gathering medicines together, gathering foods, wild blueberry harvest, and just how central our families, our kin, our children are to all of this work. And again, our kids. That shirtless baby is mine, so that I have full permission to put my little beauty up there. But yeah, just really involved in reclaiming these relationships, and so that connects to another. So there's the Wabanaki Community Herbal Apothecary as a really important way that non-Indigenous medicine growers, or those with access to land that may have important medicines for us to be able to access and to harvest and to be in relationship again with, or for medicine makers to share with our community apothecary for us to be able to distribute to community. And that has been a way that the Maine herbalism community has really showed up pretty solid and pretty strong and pretty wild and beautiful when we have put out calls for medicines to be shared to our community. And that ongoing support is incredibly valuable, and has been a very solid way of being in relationship and supporting the things that our communities need. And so image from one of our medicine apprenticeships, and some wild rice that we harvested. And connected to the work of our community apothecary and the transmission of our traditional and herbal medicine, again, in that work, we are transmitting the knowledge, but we're also reclaiming relationship to land and waterways where we can access our medicines again, where we can harvest, where we can go and give thanks, and to be a part of tending and nurturing to the plants, because that's an important part of that process and of the medicine, is that we're also living in reciprocity and able to be a part of caretaking them. And this photo is a very recent photo from extension of that work from our medicine work. We knew that reclaiming our birth and death practices were going to be central to this work of rematriating. And so this photo is from the first Northeast Indigenous birthwork gathering at Scudic Point. And yeah, these are some of the incredible existing Indigenous birth workers, others aspiring, and yeah, the centrality of our kin networks, our kin systems, our family lodge systems being reclaimed, of our medicines coming into relationship with our medicines and ceremonies again. So that was just an incredibly beautiful experience, and some really beautiful ongoing work kind of culminating from that space, and feel so honored to be a part of supporting that work. Makes me smile so big seeing that. And this makes me smile too. And so, yeah, so thinking about another really important piece of this work that, non-Wabanaki support could be really important is supporting of our Rematriation School. Through all of this work of organizing in our communities, of feeding our people, of getting medicines to our people, our kids are with us, our kids are a part of that journey, of that knowledge transfer and exchange. This work of rematriating, it is so crucial that all of what we're doing is centering families, which includes elders, which includes our children, and nourishing and supporting those who are doing the caregiving, which we all have our different pieces of the caregiving, but really uplifting, parents and caregivers. So our children are with us, but our Rematriation School is an intentional space for engaging our children, going at their pace and really elevating them as leaders and centering them as teachers to all of us, to grown ones, to the other children that are a part of Eastern Woodlands Rematriation Collective and the communities that we're all, the tribal communities that we're all a part of. So we just received enough funding that we can hire a full-time instructor, a teacher, Rematriation School teacher, and we have funding for a part-time coordinator, and are really going to be able to put some dedicated energy into giving this more of the structure and the energy that it needs. We're so excited. We are really hopeful to be able to eventually raise enough funds to do some infrastructure support work that will be really important for creating spaces for us to be on the earth together and to do some of this teaching. But yeah, looking for folks that have different skills, different opportunities for us to, different pieces of land, different places that we might be able to spend time and do some different teaching. As you can see in these photos, again, my oldest daughter this past fall, in this process of connecting with the food, with wild cranberries, but also the importance of that, what that means for connecting to the land and the water and the places of these foods, and how those things are so deeply interconnected, and having access to those places is an ongoing challenge, especially thinking about coastal and tidal areas. There's just more and more privatization, and more folks closing off access, or approaching us with hostility. And so if others have we are actively looking for relationships in coastal and tidal areas that can support our safe access to our medicines and foods in those areas. And yeah, this quote, thinking of, so this from one of my so my second mom, my auntie Esther. And so this quote here feels like it connects really closely with all of the work that we're doing, but especially with the Rematriation School, how central, you know, we need to put in really intentional effort to counter the ongoing pressures of ongoing colonization and ongoing you know, attempts at decimating our culture. And so something like Rematriation School is so important for us to create a space as Wabanaki people to be together with this very clear and shared vision of sharing knowledge, but of practicing our relationships with the earth, with our food systems, with our, you know, our food ways, our medicines, but also what that means for our relationships to one another, right? And like practicing new ways of being in relationship, of what it looks like to yeah, to practice collectivity again, right? Collective cultivation and collective management of foods again. Some more photos of our work medicines, this medicine teaching, like how to make this salve, and then shared in community, learning from our elders, learning together. These gatherings, this gathering was pre-pandemic. I think we're coming back to some of those times. Yeah, other photos of our medicine keepers and birth workers. Yeah, and just like, you know, creating opportunities to be in relationship. Well, I feel like a lot the earth for me, I've been thinking about this a lot lately, is how much the earth and how much, you know, doing this work with our traditional foods and with medicines, how much it teaches me about how to be in relationship with other humans, and that there's so many gentle lessons that the earth provides in ways that can um and just thinking about how to translate those and to embody those into relationships with our human relatives all around, indigenous and non-indigenous. So some contact information here, and maybe it can be shared out afterwards. That's all that I have for slides, and want to leave space for questions, and hopefully I can share a little bit more concrete from questions folks might have. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, I think. Okay. Okay.
Hi again. Thank you, Olivia, so much for sharing all of that with us. We really appreciate your words and your photos. And I know I have some questions for you, but we also want to invite anyone out there in the audience to put your question in the chat box. And Noelle and I will ask Olivia your question for you. And quickly, Olivia, before as questions start to come in, hopefully, in terms of supporting your work, I noticed that you shared your contact information with us. If someone, say in the community as an individual or as an organization, had land, maybe some of that like wetland habitat you were describing that was privately owned or owned by an organization, that they wanted to make known to you that it was open to come and safely harvest, would someone just email you that information or like contact you to chat with you about it, or how would that work?
Yes, yeah, they can reach out. So there's myself, but then there's also, yeah, I'm gonna get it right, the Wabanaki Land Stewardship Commission as well. And um, so depending on sort of what the offer is, but yeah, so I'm happy to be a contact person, and then kind of help connect with whether, you know, it's our collective of Indigenous food medicine producers, or whether that is a connection that maybe should be made to Wabanaki Land Stewardship Commission as well. But yeah, I do get a fair number of folks that reach out, and sometimes it's difficult because they're making an incredible offer, but they're not necessarily like, you know, they're in like southern Maine that aren't close to where we have Indigenous folks who are doing this work. So hey, if there's someone here that is an Indigenous person doing this food work down that way, and you're here in this space, please, I'm not trying to gatekeep, would love to know, to be able to make that connection.
Thank you, Olivia. Would you say that like the Blue Hill Peninsula and Deer Isle are spots that are close enough to your people that this would be an area that would be important?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's a very important area. Yeah, thank you for asking that explicitly.
So, looks like we have a question in the chat box, but I wanted to let Noelle, did you have anything you wanted to add before we hop to the chat box?
I will after this question, because I think it's really fascinating.
Cool. Would you like to read it?
Yeah. So Emily says, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and knowledge. I have a question. In Maine, there is an ongoing non-Indigenous, mostly farmer-led food sovereignty legislative work with policymakers like Craig Hickman. To my understanding, this work has been pretty separate from your work in Indigenous food sovereignty. Do you see legislation having any importance or significance for Wabanaki food sovereignty? How best might these folks show up for your work?
Yeah. So I don't know if there's like a new piece of, so I apologize if there's like a specific piece of legislation right now that's being referenced. I know there was the right to food bill that was passed the previous legislative session. And I'll just say, Craig Hickman has been an incredible vocal supporter of Wabanaki communities, Wabanaki sovereignty. He's saying things that like more people need to be saying, and he's in an incredible you know, like platform. I want to name that and express gratitude, and I have expressed that directly to him, but I do want to share that. I don't know if my connection's unstable. I can stop video at any point if I need to. In terms of, so yeah, so if this is in relation to like the right to food in Maine, it was pretty incredible that Eastern Woodlands Rematriation Collective, as this like collective of Indigenous food producers, and we're a newer formation. We've been around since 2017. So we haven't been around like, you know, a long time, but you know, we've been doing this work. We're engaged in international like spaces around food sovereignty. In 2021, we were awarded the U.S. Food Sovereignty Prize. We had no idea this work was going on in Maine. We didn't know until about 2 weeks before when we were asked if we would support it, and we're like, oh, didn't know it was a thing. So it does, and I think part of it, it just sort of highlights for me, it the somehow like these spheres of our universe we can be so isolated, both like white folks or white farmers, right, and like their efforts to reach out, and also indigenous Wabanaki folks. It's just can be incredible how it's so just the importance, like we're having these conversations, that we're reaching across our communities, but doing it early, like way earlier, so that so not only anyways, I don't, so it's complicated. And I guess I'll just make sure I'm speaking from my position. Is, I mean, I have complicated feelings. I guess for me, at the core, I don't see solutions to Wabanaki food sovereignty coming from colonial government structures. I will be 100% transparent from my position. I see and understand the state of Maine government, this legislative body, as completely illegitimate. That even through your own colonial like processes of law, illegitimate, but also from Wabanaki law, relationships, agreements, it is illegitimate. So it's difficult for me to think about engaging through state of Maine legislative processes as a pathway, because I feel like it inadvertently legitimizes a government structure that is illegitimate. However, there are real impacts by the existence of this illegitimate government that is the state of Maine, and laws that are passed in place do impact our experiences with toxins, with pollution, with access to land, to water, to these resources and foods. So it's real, and I hats off in my heart, and I'm like behind you for the non-white folks who are doing that change work in those systems. And I feel like it's harm reduction work, and it's not going to be a place of transformation that we need. I know that's probably, it's all probably pretty, like challenging for people to like hear, or maybe like reconcile that with like how deep this reality is. But I guess for me, like I have a sense like that Wabanaki governments have been here for 12,000 years. So when people like tend to feel really entrenched, or be like, well, this is where we're at, like we have the state of Maine, and there's just all these government structures, and like of course this is like what it is, and of course this is what we have to work within. I'm like, well, it's only been here 400 years. Like it has not been here that long. And it was actually an image I meant to put in this slide, and it was in relation to matriarchies. It's like, and about like the abolition of police, that there was a system of law before police, and that there will be a system of law beyond police, right? And so kind of, thinking about the state of Maine, Wabanaki nations were here for millennia, thousands and thousands of years before the state of Maine. And in my humble, opinion, Wabanaki people and our governments will persist beyond so-called state of Maine.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah. We have another question in the chat box. Would you like me to read that, Noelle?
Yeah, go ahead, and then I'll ask my question, and some more might come in.
Okay, if you also want to go first, you can totally do that.
Well, I want other people to have a chance to. I'll ask for whatever space is left.
Okay. So Rick says, you're doing an excellent job of covering this rematriation work. I'm trying to understand what is the ultimate and the Wabanaki people are seeking. I mean this as fully peaceful, absolutely no malice intended.
Yeah, no, it's a wonderful question. And I feel like I'm in a position to only answer for myself. I don't want to overstate. I don't have the consent to answer that question for other Wabanaki people. And it's like the perfect question. And so from my, I guess most essentially, I think it is what we're seeking is to be able to be supported, or maybe just like for folks to step back, for us to have more spaciousness, for us to be able to be as Wabanaki people. And what that means and looks like is for us to be able to be with the land and to be with the water, like they are our relatives, for us to be able to be with our clam flats and our deer yards, and to harvest our seaweed, to be able to be. And one of, again, and so that looks like especially white settler folks shifting power and resources to be able to support Indigenous folks, and especially Black descendants of enslaved Africans here in the United States, for us to have the spaciousness to be. And then our leadership, we will have the, like, when we're not struggling against oppression, right, to just like tread water and to exist, then we will be, and we are incredible leaders as is, struggling against, but yeah, so we can be better positioned to lead and to support the well-being of all on the land. So I don't know if that it feels more specific. For me, it feels really clear, but I understand that might not. And so if there needs more clarity around that, I welcome that. But thank you. That's the perfect question. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing all of that from your perspective, Olivia. I think that's really helpful. And we have people in the chat box saying, thank you so much, agreed, my gratitude for your giving. So it sounds like it came across and people understand. But if you do have further questions out there, please put them in the chat box.
So I'm really curious to hear more about how the matriarchal structure influences community birthing and relationship with death, and also imagining how intimately that informs relationship with land. Something that has become really evident to me in colonizer culture is honestly the inappropriate relationship with birth and death. And I won't go into that because I would love to just hold space for your response, but I'm just so curious to hear how specifically the matriarchal structure influences that.
Yeah, and so this I'm continuing to learn and unravel this and explore and be in community around this. So this is probably very elementary and hopefully not harmful understandings that I have, but thinking through, like the values and the framework of matriarchies to support nurturing, to support regeneration, and acknowledging and honoring the gifts that we all hold and carry, that have been shared with us by creation, not like a singular creator, but creation, and us all being a part and a reflection of creation. And so we all have connections and roles to play in support of regeneration and their support of life. And we all are life, right? It's like this, it's all interconnected. There's not one thing that we all are, but I think it's the really like honoring what might not be I'm like concrete, like honoring the like the power of I want to say unknown, but it's known, right? Like sometimes in English language we might say the unknown, but again, it is us. It is like so I think it's in matriarchal understandings of birth and of supporting life, that it's reflected in all of our cycles of the earth. It's of the cycles of our seasons, of food, of our food ways, right, of our birth and death cycles, and understanding it is everything is cyclical, and everything has its time, and that it is right, and not that it is wrong or maladaptive or needs intervention in like things need to be supported. You know, it's important to have community to support these natural processes, but not the intervening, right? And that's like this harm of colonization, is the disrupting of these like natural systems, right? This like human law, I'm not human, excuse me, you know, like the law of like earth and mother nature, these cycles. And so again, matriarchy, in reflection of these naturally existing cycles, supporting and humbling ourselves to those cycles. And so again, birth and death cycles are those natural that we need to be in support of and nurturing of, but not for us to be intervening in, not for us to be dictating, right? It's for us to be in support of. And so thank you for going on that ride while I was trying to work through.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that was an incredible, beautiful response. And I know it was also a big question that could probably be a full conversation in and of itself, but an honor to hear you speak on it. And definitely something that I will continue marinating on and learning about in my own life, and hopefully bringing into, you know, friendships and community and our work at Island Heritage Trust, just that honoring of the natural cycles that is so present in the uninterrupted feminine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for that, and really, you know, closely connecting, because it is amazing how often, because Eastern Woodlands Rematriation, you know, we're food and medicine producers, and producer, it's a tough, you know, English word, but you know, you're just going with it, producer. And so when we talk about this Indigenous birthwork reclamation, people are like, oh whoa, you know, non-native people are like, oh wow, like, and people have said, oh well that's like, you know, they feel like it's like this really other kind of work, and for us it's like, oh, like it is all so intertwined, right? Like the nurturing of of life, of cycles, like this is all, it's so interconnected. So it's interesting how for some folks it can feel really disparate, and we're like, this is a natural extension and growth of this food and medicine work, is the birth work.
That's really wonderful to hear that, Olivia. Thank you. We have another question here. What forms of support does Eastern Woodlands Rematriation ask of non-Wabanaki people here? I know you mentioned a little bit about the herbal apothecary and how maybe non-native herbalists have been donating medicines and some other things, but if you wanted to talk a little bit more about that, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. So I would say the number one thing, perhaps, that non-Wabanaki people can do is to learn about, be committed to the ongoing work of learning, seeing, and then upending white supremacy and settler colonialism. That would be the greatest gift to my children and to your children and future generations, is to understand our own particular place within that, and what pieces of those processes we can impact. We can be brave and shift power to Wabanaki and to Black folks. that is the most important thing that and many can do. And then there's other things, right, like land access or donations. Yes, very supportive of our work, but like at the core, it's like learn this shared truth so that we can build the shared future that our children need.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
So many wonderful comments in the chat box. My gratitude for your giving is one, beautifully articulated through your response about the matriarchy, and more thank yous.
And somebody said in the chat box that they thought it started at 5. I'm so sorry that you missed being with us here in person for this, or like in live time. It will be recorded though, so you can watch the recording if you're just entering now and have missed the rest of it. And I do want to be sensitive to time. It is 5:02. And we're so grateful for the hour that Alivia was willing to spend with us and share. But I don't want to hold you up because I'm sure you have so much that you do in your life and in your work. I'm sure you're on to the next thing. And but we're so grateful to have had you here tonight. And thank you everyone for showing up and learning and listening and hopefully taking away with things to act upon, going back out into the world from what Alivia has shared with us. There will be a recording, as I mentioned, and then I'll figure out a way to share Alivia's contact information as well. I think I can just send you all an email, everyone who registered, so that if you have questions for her about how to support the work, that can happen as well. Alivia, is there anything else you would like to share before we finish up here?
No, I just that I look forward to being on the earth with as many people as possible. I'm just needing that connection on the earth with humans. So hopefully there might be, opportunities and ways that makes sense. And yeah, thank you all.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
We'll be in touch, Alivia. I have some ideas stewing, and so hopefully our organization can be in touch with you about some of the things you mentioned. All right, everyone, have a wonderful night. Oh, there are more comments in the chat box. I feel badly just kind of shutting out of them. But just again, thank yous and fascinating and inspiring, and thank you, everyone.
Oh, good.
All right, have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.